What's up, everybody? My name is Dr. Zach Guiser, and this is another entry into the Athlete Development Journal where we take complex athletic problems and provide simple solutions. Now, as you can see, I'm standing up, which is a little bit abnormal, but the reason why is because I think today's episode is the most important, most exhilarating, most profound piece of content I've created in my memory. And I'm just way too fired up. I can't sit still. I gotta be up. I gotta be moving around.
Yeah, straight A student, but I'm friends with the cool kids. Following the rules and the rubric. Freestyle on the
Now, what has me so excited? What has me this fired up? Well, today, I want to talk about how to chase down your dream. Now, before we get into it, I have to give you some background on who I am, what I've done, and what dreams I've chased. So, for as long as my brain can remember, I've been obsessed with the sport of football. From the time I was little, you can see little mean mugging me in the top left-hand corner there. The only thing I wanted to do was play Division I football. So I was a little bit of an abnormal kid. Whenever I went to preschool, I was a millennial, so we all got an award for whatever it is that we did best. And my award was for best planner because I would spend the first half of the day planning out what toys I was going to play with and what order I was going to play with them in the second half of the day. So you can get an insight into how my brain kind of operates. I'm a little bit compulsive, a little bit obsessive, a little bit focused. And so whenever I decided, hey, I want to play Division I football, that's the only thing I really thought about from a young age. Football ranks, it became clear that I had some talent to match that obsession. I was persistent and I begged my parents to send me to Greensboro Central Catholic, which was the local football powerhouse at that time. When I walked into GCC for the very first day of high school, the very first period I had in 2009, the very first person I talked to on the first period of the first day of high school was some cute girl named Rachel. Now remember that, we're going to cycle back to her here in a little bit. I ended up having a good football career. My freshman year, I led the state in interceptions. We went to the state championship game. I ended up with 10 Division I offers. By the time my senior year rolled around, I graduated from there in 2013, and I ended up choosing to go play football at the University of Akron. So I actually convinced somehow that cute girl from the first period named Rachel to follow me to the University of Akron, where I ended up having a good football career there as well. I started for 3 years at the Division I level. I became a team captain my senior year, and you can see in the pictures, everybody always gets a little bit fired up about these ones. You can see me tackling Saquon Barkley in the bottom right-hand corner. You can see me tackling Baker Mayfield in the bottom left-hand corner. So I got to play in some cool places. I got to do some cool things, but I had a good career. I had a productive, successful Division I football career. And somehow, some way, even more importantly, I convinced that cute girl to say yes to marrying me at the 50-yard line of Infocision Stadium, which is where we played at Akron, before my senior year started. Now, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. In the middle of my senior year, just whenever I was at my peak, I had a head injury that made some national news and ended my football career. At the time, I was studying exercise science in college, so I jumped straight into becoming a strength and conditioning coach. I interned at the Division I level, and I started working in the private sector. I got to work with some high-level athletes way too early on in my career, but I got to do some cool things, got some cool experiences. I then went to Walsh University to pursue my doctorate in physical therapy. This time, I followed that girl. So she followed me to Akron. I followed her to Walsh, who was already there getting her master's in occupational therapy. Fortunately, she didn't get cold feet and said yes at the altar while we were both in grad school, and we added 2 pups to our crew and settled in Ohio. And you can see our 2 pups, Aslan and Champ, in the bottom right. After graduation, we moved back to Pennsylvania, where we own a sports performance center where I serve as a physical therapist and sports performance coach. I have a little bit of a weird job where I do both, but I help athletes get faster, stronger, more explosive, and healthier to dominate on game day. Even better, that cute girl has given me 2 more cute little girls to love up on. And I know what you're thinking. Sick. Thanks for your whole life story, bro. This does not apply to me whatsoever. What else are you going to bore us with today? I promise you some of this stuff's going to come back around. There's a reason I went over this, but we're now going to get into it. How to chase down your dream. That's what I want to talk about. How can you chase down your dream? It might be a little bit too corny for you if I say that, so maybe you can think of it as how to be successful. And if we want to give a blueprint on how to be successful, the first thing we need to do is define success. So what is success? I don't know. I don't know what the definition of success is because that's something that you decide. Success looks different to everyone. Success for me might have been going and playing Division I football, getting married to the girl I fell in love with, having a family, starting a business. But success to you might look entirely different. Success to Elon Musk is going out there and sending rockets into space. So you decide what success looks like to you. Don't let somebody else's definition of success apply to you. And the first thing you have to do, step number one, whenever you are on your way to being successful, when you're on your way to chasing down your dream, is ignore traditional advice. I hate the advice, be realistic. Do not be realistic. Step number one is don't be realistic. Now, why do I say that? Because here I was a small kid from the middle of nowhere. Our town had more cows than people. You can see Newell, Pennsylvania had a population of 512 at the 2020 census. Legitimately, probably had more cows than people. So in addition to our town having more cows than people, we hadn't been to the playoffs in over 30 years in football, and neither one of my parents have even played a high school sport. A lot of kids who play at the Division I level are coming from some genetic lineage where their parents have played professional sports, they played high-level college sports. My parents did not even play a high school sport. Now here I am as a little kid talking about how I want to play Division I football, coming from the middle of nowhere with no people, no genetic lineage of high-level sports, nothing that looks like it's in my favor. It wasn't realistic. It was not realistic for me to play Division I football. But a few years later, in 2017, I had become a 3-year starter at the Division I level. I was a team captain, and I had an interception to silence 100,000 screaming fans at Beaver Stadium. It was amazing. It was the first drive of the game, national television, opening game, first game of the year. They're driving down the field on us. The crowd's going crazy. They're approaching the end zone, and I had an interception. I got to see it go completely silent in there. That small town kid moving forward and doing that at the Division I level was not realistic. But it happened. My story is not even close to the most unrealistic things that have happened. It is nothing compared to what others have accomplished. So on the left here, we've got a couple of brothers. At the very beginning of the 1900s, these two brothers had a dream. Neither one had a college degree. Actually, neither one of them had a high school diploma. They were just two guys who liked making things and fixing things. They owned a bicycle repair shop and had a weird obsession with the possibility of flying. Now, these two guys, you might have heard their names before. This is Orville and Wilbur Wright. I want to reiterate, they had no college degree. They did not have a high school diploma. They were just two brothers who owned a bicycle repair shop. Now, let me paint a picture of what the world thought was realistic about flying at that time. So, in 1895, just 8 years before the Wright brothers flew, the world-renowned physicist and president of the Royal Society, Lord Kelvin, famously stated, "I have not the smallest molecule of faith in aerial navigation other than ballooning or of expectation of good results from any of the trials we hear of." So the president of the Royal Society, the guy who's like #1 scientist in the world, the guy who's like alpha scientist says, yeah, we ain't flying anytime soon. We're not even close. That's just 8 years before the Wright brothers actually did it. Simon Newcomb, a famous astronomer and mathematician, wrote an article in 1901 stating that building a flying machine would require the discovery of a new law of nature or a new force. He argued that even if a man did build a machine, there would be no room for a pilot or fuel because the engine would have to be so heavy. So, a famous astronomer and mathematician didn't think that flying was possible. He thought it was so unrealistic that we would have to discover a new law of nature. He did not think the current laws of physics allowed for a man to fly. And that's just 2 years before the Wright brothers actually did it. In a scathing editorial published just 2 months before the Wright brothers' success, the New York Times predicted that it would take the combined efforts of mathematicians and engineers somewhere between 1 million and 10 million years to achieve human flight. 2 months before they did it, they said that it would take the combined efforts of mathematicians and engineers somewhere between 1 million and 10 million years. Just 2 months before the Wright brothers, who were just two dudes who own a bicycle repair shop, actually did it. Simply put, flying was not realistic in 1903. It was unrealistic. But the Wright brothers didn't care what other people thought was realistic. And you could see the newspaper headline, "A flying machine that really flies." And the Wright brothers did it. It was unrealistic for two dudes who had no high school diploma. They had no college degree. They just owned a bicycle repair shop and were weirdly obsessed with flying, and they did it. It wasn't realistic, but it happened. Now, I want to give another example of something that might even be more unrealistic, but still came to fruition. In the late 1970s, vacuum cleaners worked using bags. And you can see that in the bottom left-hand picture right there. That's a vacuum cleaner bag. As soon as the pores in the bag got clogged, the suction from the vacuum died. James Dyson, who's the kid in the top left, was annoyed by this, and one day he had an idea. In sawmills, they use cyclones to spin sawdust out of the air. He thought it would be cool to try to take the cyclone concept, where they had these massive industrial-sized things that spun around and they pulled all the sawdust out, and he wanted to shrink it down to the size that could fit in a household vacuum and apply that same logic. He identified as an inventor, not a businessman, so he started trying to sell vacuum manufacturers on his idea. But no one even gave him the time of day. They thought it was completely ludicrous. In fact, they hated the idea of getting rid of bags. You think about it, if you're the vacuum cleaner manufacturer, you sell them the vacuum cleaner, you sell them the initial bag, that bag gets clogged, they have to get more bags. Who sells them the bags? The vacuum manufacturers. So here we have this $500 million a year replacement bag business, and this guy comes around and says, hey, I can fix this where you don't ever have to sell another bag again. These vacuum manufacturers are like, nah, one, that's completely impossible. Two, no, why would we even want to try to do that? That doesn't make any sense for us. So James Dyson, he had to go out on his own. He had no money. He had no lab. He had essentially no equipment. And he put together a makeshift workshop in his backyard shed. At the time, let me paint this picture. He had 3 kids, a wife, and owed a lot of money to the bank. Yet, from the time he was 31 years old to the time he was 36 years old, his family lived off of his wife's art teaching salary while he made, ready for it, 5,127 prototypes. Yes, I said that correctly. 5,127 prototypes. It took him 5 years to perfect the design. He finally made it. He's 31 years old. Doesn't have other income. He's not doing something else on his day job. He's dedicating his life to this. And after 5 years, he finally perfects the design. He made it. All that time, all that energy, all that anxiety, all that debt paid off after 5 years. Wait. Yeah. No, that's not what happened. Not yet. Not so fast. He's 5 years in. He got the design, but he had to spend the next 10 years trying to sell it to a company. He tried licensing the technology, but everything kept falling through. It wasn't until he was 46 years old that he finally set up his own factory and the Dyson company started raking in money. He worked on it relentlessly from the time he was 31 years old till he was 46 years old. For 15 years, he relentlessly iterated and persisted with no real sign of success forthcoming. That's not realistic. That's not something a realistic person would do. But now his net worth is somewhere between $10 and $15 billion, and he owns more land in England than the king does. It was not realistic for some kid to go from, hey, you know what? I don't like it that I have to buy these bags because these pores get clogged. I can fix this. I can make this a better solution and spend the next 15 years of his life with no real evidence of progress and come out the other side a $10 to $15 billion entrepreneur. It wasn't realistic, but it happened. So I want you to dream big, but a dream without a plan is just a wish, which takes us to our next step. Now we have to set intentional goals. You have your dream. You know what you want to accomplish. Now, how are we going to get there? So we have 3 different types of goals we have to work through. Now, this is going to be the most boring part of the talk, but I need you to lock in and stay focused because this might be the most important part of the talk. Okay, so we have outcome goals, we have performance goals, and we have process goals. We're going to start with outcome goals. Outcome goals are the big picture, main focus, end result thing. Those often involve competing for something against other people. This is an important part right here. They are highly dependent on factors outside of your control. I want to say that again. They are highly dependent on factors outside of your control. So a good outcome goal is something that you have roughly a 50% chance of accomplishing. If you have a 99% chance of accomplishing something, then that's not really a good goal to shoot for. You're really selling yourself short. Conversely, if you have a 1% chance of accomplishing something, you're kind of really just setting yourself up for failure. A good, solid outcome goal to start with is something you have roughly a 50% chance of accomplishing. So here are some examples of outcome goals that we set with our athletes in the facility. So it could be earning a Division II scholarship. It could be named starting varsity. It could be being named first team all conference or all section, all Whitfield, all state, whatever. It could be making the JV team. It could be being the county player of the year. You decide. Some other more life-related outcome goals are maybe getting a UPMC orthopedic surgery residency, running a profitable business, playing music in front of 100,000 screaming fans, running the first 4-minute mile, or inventing the first successful flying machine. So those last two, in case you didn't catch on, that's Roger Bannister with the 4-minute mile. Everybody thought that was completely impossible. He ended up doing it. And then the Wright brothers inventing the first successful flying machine. Those were their outcome goals. So, our next level of goals are our performance goals. Now, our performance goals are specific metrics that are aligned with your outcome goal. These are still dependent on outside factors, but less so than outcome goals. Okay? Still dependent on outside factors, but less so than outcome goals. Think about what areas you specifically need to improve on to increase the odds of being successful in your outcome goal. Then you turn those areas into measurables. So let me give an example of what young me wanted. Young me was obsessed with playing Division I football. So if I was going into my junior year of high school, this is what they looked like at that time. My performance goals. My outcome goal obviously would be to earn Division I football scholarships. So my performance goals, I will weigh 190 pounds by August 1st. I will run a hand time 4.49 second 40-yard dash at least one college camp this summer. I'll have 8 interceptions this season. Yada, yada, yada. You get it. So these are specific measurable things that I can check at the end of the day and say, okay, did I weigh 190 pounds by August 1st? Yes or no. They are falsifiable. They are objectively falsifiable. Did I do this or did I not do this? They are very specific. They are measurable. They are time bound. They are, and I'll take out the realistic part of that SMART goals things, but you can see these are things that I can say objectively, yes or no, I did not do this, okay? The last set of goals here are our process goals. Now, these are the specific daily and weekly habits, actions, and behaviors that build towards your performance and your outcome goals. Now, important here, these are fully within your own control. That's important. These are fully within your own control. And these are some examples of what process goals might look like. So I will say affirmations for 5 minutes every morning when I first wake up. I will hit a full body strength training session 3 times per week for 1.5 hours each session. I will go to the field to work on my 40 start, my acceleration, my max velo, and my pro agility at least 3 times per week from January through July, so on and so forth. Again, all of these must be objectively falsifiable. You have to clearly answer, did I do this or did I not do this? You can't be vague and say, I will focus on saying positive. You have to be specific and say what mental development tool you're going to use, how often you're going to use it, and how long you're going to use it each session. That's what good goal setting looks like. Now, I highlighted this a couple times. We're going to circle back to it now. What do you mean I don't have full control over these goals? So you can't conflate the outcome with the correctness of the process. Now, what does that mean? In non-nerd speak, that means you can do the wrong thing and get a good outcome, or you can do the right thing and get a bad outcome. That's the blessing and the curse of existing in a complex world. With so many unpredictable variables having a say in the outcomes, you cannot guarantee that doing everything the right way will lead to an ideal outcome. And absolutely everything that deals with human biology or psychology or whatever we're dealing with in this realm has essentially infinite unpredictable variables. There's too much complexity for us to say, absolutely, if I just work hard enough, I will 100% earn that Division I football scholarship. No, outcomes are fickle, okay? Our brains don't like this, though, and one of our key survival mechanisms is to simplify the world down into nice and neat rules to sort the gray into black or white. We assume that if the outcome was good, the process was also good, so we start playing the role of history revisionist. Susie played softball year-round since she was 11 years old. Now she's a D1 softball player. Therefore, you should play softball year-round to go D1. Or, Kyle did 2-hour-long fancy ladder and hexering footwork drills, and he was one of the best defensive players to ever play in the NFL. Therefore, 2-hour-long fancy footwork drills help you play in the NFL. No, that's not how it works. Instead, I implore you to think of the world as probabilistic. Good processes enhance the odds of a good outcome, not guarantee it. Bad processes enhance the odds of a bad outcome, not guarantee it. Think about it. If you do something that gives you a 95% chance of success, you're still going to fail 5% of the time. Doing something that has a 95% chance of success is almost always the best course of action you can take, even if it didn't work out the end and despite what your hindsight tells you. Crazy things will happen. You could be the best basketball player in the state of Pennsylvania, but you don't get any Division I offers because the transfer portal is absolutely insane right now, and everyone's only recruiting 22-year-old grown men who have been in the college system. Or you could have a 6'9" transfer come in and steal your starting spot on the varsity team. Or you could get hit by a baseball bat and miss your entire season. Those are all extreme yet real examples but the more benign situations can just as easily sway you from accomplishing your outcome goals. Like maybe your genetics simply do not allow you to ever run a 4.4 40-yard dash on a laser. Who knows? The point is, you can't tie your happiness and your gauge of success strictly to something you cannot control. You can increase the odds that you accomplish your outcome and performance goals, but you can never 100% guarantee them. Process goals, however, are a different story. You get to decide whether or not the process goals get done. You get to decide every day whether you wake up and you do that training session you said that you were going to do. You get to decide every day whether you wake up and do your affirmations. You get to decide whether you count your calories and get to your 3,500 calories per day. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. There are not outside influences that sway that outcome. The process is not fickle. Outcomes are. So the only thing you should care about, the only thing you should be focused on is the process, okay? Focus on the process and the outcomes have a greater chance of happening. Now that brings us to step 3, and this is where most of you are going to fall. Step 3, execute the process with a level of consistency and intensity unknown to mankind, okay? This is where most of you are going to fall. Most of you are like, yeah, fired up. I can set a dream. I can set some goals, but then it's going to get a little mundane. It's going to get a little boring. It's going to get a little hard, and this is where you're going to fall off because this doesn't change just because you're not feeling it that day. You'll notice on the process goals example slide, I talked about my goal was to go to the field 3 times per week, January through July. That wasn't a typo. I lived in Western Pennsylvania. It snowed a ton, January through March. Shoot, January through April, we're getting a lot of snowstorms. That didn't change whether or not I went to the field. I cannot tell you how many times I went down to the field with a shovel, shoveled off a lane to work on my acceleration, or shoveled off the field so I could do some defensive back drills. It does not change just because the situation makes it a little bit more difficult. That's where most people are going to fall. Most people aren't going to go down to the field with a shovel and shovel everything off. They're not going to de-ice the field so they can get their work in that day. But that's what allows you to separate from the pack because most people are not going to execute the process with a level of consistency and intensity unknown to mankind. If you do it, it enhances your odds of getting the outcome that you want. So let's talk about some examples of people who have exhibited this. So in the top left here, we got a guy named Jerry Seinfeld. For you young bucks, you might or might not know him. But in terms of financial success and longevity, Jerry Seinfeld is probably the most successful comedian of all time. He's made over $1 billion from his comedy career. $1 billion. He made so much money that he turned down a $110 million offer from NBC to do a 10th season of his show because he wanted to go out on top. His show was the top-rated show, and they were about to do a 10th season. He said, you know what? I want to go out on top. I want to be done here. You can take your $110 million. I don't want it. I don't need it. I just want to be known as the best, and I want to go out on top. So how did he do it? Seinfeld has a don't break the chain process. He has a giant calendar on his wall that every day where he writes at least one joke into his yellow legal notepad, he gets to write a big X on the calendar. And his process is he will not break the chain. It doesn't matter how he feels that day, he refuses to break the chain of red X's. This process compounds to where he can cover an entire street in New York City with his yellow legal notepad paper. And if you Google search to find that video, I can't find a picture where you can see the whole street, but that's all of his notes. Those are his jokes that he's written over the years that cover up an entire street. We can only see a small window, but it takes up an entire New York City street with all of his yellow legal notepad paper. He doesn't wake up and say, you know what, man, I don't feel funny today. I'm not going to write any jokes. You know what? My girlfriend broke up with me. I don't think I can write that joke today. I'm not feeling good. I got a little cold. I'm not going to write that joke today. No, it doesn't matter. Some days he only writes one joke. Sometimes he writes a ton of jokes, but it doesn't matter. Every single day, regardless of how Jerry Seinfeld feels, Jerry Seinfeld's going to wake up and he's going to write some jokes. Jerry Seinfeld is obsessed with the process, and that led to the outcome of him being the most successful comedian of all time. Now, Stephen King is the other guy in the other picture there. He might be the most prolific author of all time. So he's made $500 million from his books, sold over 400 million copies, and has had more books adapted into major film productions than any other author. So his books go on to be massive hits in movie theaters. He doesn't just sell books, they become these massive movie adaptations. How does he do it? Well, you can guess. He's obsessed with the process. He famously writes 2,000 words every single day. It doesn't matter how long it takes him. He will not get out of his desk chair until he writes his 2,000 words. Every single day. Birthday, Christmas, 4th of July, New Year's, snowstorm, sunny day. Does not matter. Every single day, he's going to close his office door and he's going to write 2,000 words and he's not going to get out of his chair until he does it. Stephen King is obsessed with the process, and it's led to the outcome of him being one of the most successful authors of all time. Now, here's a story I think you guys will jive with a little bit more. This is one of my favorite stories of all time. In 2007, Kobe was the best basketball player in the world. So for those of you in the massive debate, this was not a debatable period. I'm not saying he was the best of all time. I'm saying MJ had already retired and LeBron was still a young buck. Kobe was the best basketball player in the world. That year, Alan Stein Jr., who was a reporter, had the opportunity to watch Kobe go through a workout. Kobe told Stein to be at the gym at 4 a.m. And Alan Stein knows Kobe's reputation. He's like, man, I know this dude works hard. I'm going to beat him to the gym. So Alan Stein gets there early, gets there at 3:30 in the morning. He's like, yeah, I'm going to beat Kobe in the gym. I'm going to work harder than Kobe is today. However, whenever he got there, the lights were already on at the gym, and Kobe was already drenched in sweat. He had already been there. He'd already warmed up. He'd already gone through his stuff. He tried to get there earlier than Kobe, couldn't do it. He was so far behind Kobe that Kobe was already drenched in sweat. So Stein sat in the bleachers and, as he recounts it, was, quote, bored out of his mind. For the next 45 minutes, Kobe did the most basic footwork and offensive drills that you can do in basketball. Stein says that everything Kobe did that day, he'd already done with his 6-year-old twins. He executed those drills with unbelievable precision, unbelievable intensity, and unbelievable focus, but they were still the most basic aspects of the game. Later that day, Stein said to Kobe, dude, you're the best player in the world. Why are you doing such basic drills? Kobe responded, why do you think I'm the best player in the world? Because I never, ever get bored with the basics. The basics, the fundamentals, the process. That's what allowed Kobe to become one of the best players to play basketball of all time. All right, that takes us to step 4. Let's run them back real quick. Step number 1 is don't be realistic. Step number 2 is set intentional goals. Step number 3 is execute those processes with elite, unbelievable enthusiasm, intensity, and consistency. Step 4 is to reflect and iterate. Now, this step is important because it's important to periodically take stock of what's working, what's not working, and update your process accordingly. You are going to fail at something along the way. And if you don't, that means you're not dreaming big enough. Eventually, you're going to fail, so you want to reflect and iterate. Even when you succeed, you want to reflect and iterate. What went right? What went wrong? What can I do better next time? Furthermore, you are going to change as a person. You are going to have different dreams. Your dreams, what you have right now, might not stay your dreams in the future. And that's okay. That's evolution. That's reflection. That's iteration. It's okay to have dreams that evolve. This is why I had to tell you my story at the beginning. From the time I was a little kid, the only thing I wanted to do was play Division I football. I wanted it so bad. I sold my heart, sold my soul, sold everything so I had a chance to play Division I football. I did everything I possibly could. I got there. I was living that dream. And in a moment's notice, it was all ripped out from underneath of me. I had my head injury and I had to retire from football. All of a sudden, I went from Zach Guiser, the football player, to Zach Guiser. Who is Zach Guiser? At that moment, my dream had to change. I went through a lot of fuzziness. I went through a lot of unclarity about what my dream was, who I was trying to be. But eventually I came through on the other side with a dream that I'm 10 times more enthusiastic about, and that's 10 times more in my nature. I'm 10 times more encoded for than what I originally wanted to do, which was play Division I football. Now I get to train athletes. I get to rehab athletes. I own my own business where I get to wake up every single day and help athletes get more athletic. I get to help them develop into who they're supposed to be as human beings. And we have a successful business that allows us to do so. It is unbelievable that I get to wake up every single day and do this. I am obsessed with my job. I love what I do. And that is not what I originally thought I was going to do. My dream changed along the way. My dream started out just by playing football at the highest level. Then it evolved into having a loving family with an amazing wife, amazing kids, and an amazing job where I get to help pay it forward and help the next generations of athletes live out their dreams. So your dream, just like mine, will change along the way, and that's okay. In order to find out what your dream is, what your absolute best career moving forward can be, I find this to be a helpful, thoughtful reflection exercise from Naval Ravikant. Find something that feels like play to you, but looks like work to others. So something that your friends will come up to you and say, man, I don't know how you do that. I can't believe you wrote that. I hated writing that essay. And you're just like, hey, you know what? I had a lot of fun doing that. Or, I can't believe we have to go lift today. I can't believe we have to go to training session. You're like, you know what? I'm excited. I love lifting. Find something that feels like play to you and looks like work to others. For me, I love reading biomechanics textbooks. My wife will vouch for me. There are several texts relevant to that just sit next to our bed. I read them before I go to sleep. It brings me so much joy. It brings me so much peace to just work through those thought puzzles. It looks so boring, so hard, and like so much work to other people, but it feels like play and peace to me. That is a sign that what you're doing is valuable to the world, but you are uniquely qualified to do it. Okay. I want to go through a couple real world examples of people who have chased down their dreams successfully that came from the same place I did. So if you look at this picture, I had this in the opening slide. You might not have noticed it. This is a picture where I'm pretty sure I am the only one looking at the camera, but I'm the one who made this presentation, so I get to choose the picture. If they were given the presentation, then they get to choose the picture. I like this picture of me, so we'll choose this one. But in the middle there, we've got Dan Swank, okay? So I got him circled right there. Dan played football with us at Greensburg Central Catholic, but more important to him, he loved music. He and a couple of other classmates had a band called Wait Till Friday. Eventually, he went on and started doing his own thing, making his own music. You can see a couple of his early stuff there. We've got Daniel Swank, Myself and My Song, and the No Scene EP. I don't know what an EP is. This is not my area. I don't really know this stuff, but I did buy his stuff, wanted to support. Whenever I plug my phone in, it's still the only thing I ever have on Apple Music. It still plays whenever I plug in my phone. So Dan loved playing music. Whenever he went to college, he started playing football at Westminster, but he stopped doing that because he wanted to focus on his music after his freshman year. And he went to school, played a bunch of music, played a bunch of local shows. And eventually he had the opportunity to pay money and go down to record at Ryan Dawson's recording studio. So Ryan Dawson owns a recording studio. He's the drummer from the band All Time Low. And Dan had the opportunity to pay to go down there and record some music. Dan was fired up. You can see a picture of Dan and Ryan from that recording trip right down there. And for you young bucks, if you don't know who All Time Low is, shame on you. You know that one quintessential emo song from TikTok, as you guys always bring up in my facility. But yeah, great band, great music. Dan was a big fan, had the opportunity to go down and record with him. But here's what Dan did that most other people wouldn't do. When Dan was down there, he built a great relationship with Ryan. And then before he left, he handed him his resume and said, look, if anything pops up, I would love the opportunity to work for you down here. So he goes back up to Westminster for the next 6 months, doesn't hear anything from him at all. As he's about to graduate, he gets a call from Ryan and says, hey, you know what? Something popped up down here. Are you sure you want to do this? Do you want to come down and work here? And Dan's like, absolutely. Packs all his bags, sprints down to Nashville, drops everything that he had going on, moves down to Nashville, and starts up a career working in a recording studio. Okay, so he's not working as part of the band. He's working as a lower level individual at the recording studio. So eventually Dan does a really good job. He works his way up. I'm not sure the exact details, but I know he works his way to where he's basically running the entire recording studio. And through that process, he starts to get to know the band members a little bit. As he gets to know the band members, he gets a little bit more responsibility. Eventually, they ask him to come on tour with him where he would run the behind the scenes of the tour. So anything they need him to do, grab some coffee, clean the bus, whatever it is, that would be Dan's job to do it. Dan said, absolutely, I would love to do that. And Dan does a great job of that. And I'm not sure exactly how he ended up doing this, but somehow, some way, one day, they asked him to play on stage with him. So all of a sudden, Dan Swank is now the fifth guy on stage with All Time Low. They're the four original band members, and Dan Swank is up there too. And I love this quote from his Instagram caption in that picture in the bottom right. I don't know if it's a glitch in the universe or if it's the amount of time spent working towards something that seems illogical to everyone around you. I'm going to run that back in a second. But now I have proof that sometimes your favorite band asks you to tag along and play shows around planet Earth with them. Life be a trip, man. Let me run that back. I don't know if it's a glitch in the universe or if it's the amount of time spent working towards something that seems illogical to everyone around you. That's how Dan got there. So now Dan is always on stage with them. Dan's always the fifth guy on stage playing with All Time Low. He was a key member of their most recent radio hit, Monsters, where he played a significant role. He's been on Good Morning America. He's been on The Ellen Show. He's played in front of 100,000 fans at Lollapalooza. Dan has gone from playing these tiny shows in Westminster, Pennsylvania, in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, in Jeanette, Pennsylvania, to playing in front of thousands and thousands of screaming fans on a regular basis. And here's what I love the most about all this, though. He didn't set out to say, you know what, I want to play at Lollapalooza. He just loved playing music. He loved the thing. His caption, this might be my favorite part of all this. His caption, that picture on the left, the picture of Just Dan playing in front of a few people there is, favorite show ever tonight. Thank you for all the support. Dude, there's like nobody there. I love you, Dan, if you're watching this, but there's like 10 people out in the stands. And his thing was, I'm fired up. This is my favorite show ever. This was amazing. There was like 10 people who came to watch me play. That was incredible. He loved the process. He loved playing. He loved doing the thing. And that's what led him to the outcome of playing in front of 100,000 screaming fans. He didn't get to 100,000 screaming fans because he decided he wanted to get in front of 100,000 screaming fans. He found something he loved. He found his passion. He found his thing that he was uniquely qualified for, that lit him up inside, and he attacked it with unbelievable intensity. And I quote, an amount of time spent working towards something that seems illogical to everyone around you. He was not realistic about this, but it happened. Him going from his favorite show ever being in front of 10 people to 100,000 screaming fans and being a member of All Time Low, his favorite band of all time, was completely unrealistic. But he did it anyways. So I asked Dan to share a word with you about what advice he would give to someone trying to chase down their dream, or what allowed him to chase down his dream. So I'm going to play that for you now.
Hey everyone. Thank you, Zach, for having me talk about dream chasing. When I look back on everything that's got me to where I'm at today, the biggest thing I can share is that, the importance of trusting your gut and trusting your vision. At the end of the day, you're the only person who has the passion and vision that you do for whatever it may be. So that means no one around you is going to see it or feel it the same way that you do. And sure, that can feel isolating at times, but I always found that it was my greatest motivator to prove, that the impossible was possible. And, your greatest superpower through that is oftentimes your belief in yourself, and it's not outside encouragement or affirmation. So through your hardest times, the biggest challenges, just trust your gut, and that can go a really long way. Keep dreaming.
So I don't know if you caught on to what he said there, but what he said sounded a lot like my step one. And I'll tell you, there was absolutely no prompting. Dan has no idea what my steps are for how to chase down your dream. But that sure sounds a lot like step one. Don't be realistic. Don't listen to what other people's expectations are. Don't listen to what other people say. Follow your intuition. Follow your gut. Follow your dream. Now I want to go back to the same picture that, again, I got to choose. Sorry, guys. If you do the presentation, you get to choose the picture. We have another one in this picture. That's Zach Herman. So Zach Herman, from long before I knew him, wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. Okay? Zach was a very good basketball player from a young age, went on to play at Seton Hill University. He had a full academic scholarship because he's a super genius. He's one of those dudes who just runs on an intellectual horsepower that's just different from the rest of us. One of those people you just talk to and you're like, oh, yeah, he's got something I don't have. Intellectually, very, 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 very gifted, but more importantly, he's worked his tail off to get to where he is. So he went to Seton Hill University for undergrad, to medical school in Philadelphia, and he got a orthopedic surgery residency at UPMC, which is an extremely hard orthopedic surgery residency to get. That's been his dream for as long as I can remember. The only thing he wanted to do was be an orthopedic surgeon, and he's worked his tail off to get there. As I record this, he's in the process of doing interviews for Match Day for a fellowship in sports medicine. So he's gone on to do incredible things he's dreamt of doing since he was extremely young. So again, I wanted to ask him his advice on what it would take for someone to chase down their dream.
I think the best advice I can give you all is, when you're looking to chase a dream and you have a final end goal in mind, you have to set benchmarks for yourself. Those benchmarks can be short-term goals, they can be daily goals, but along the way, to reach a long-term dream that takes, in my case, maybe 12 or 15 years of education, you need to have short-term goals. And that even means daily goals. You really have to fall in love with the journey and the process of chasing that final goal and that final dream in order to embody it, embrace it, and succeed in it. So I would encourage you all to go to bed every day saying, I've given 100%. I put my head on the pillow knowing that I've controlled everything that I can control and no one has worked harder than me. That's really the only thing that you can control. And I encourage you all to focus on that, because there's always going to be a lot of outside noise and a lot of outside influence. If you can focus on what you can control and give your 110% every day, that's all you can focus on. So I encourage you all to set short-term goals along the way to reaching your dream, and go to bed every night saying, I gave 110%, and no one can ever take that away from you. Good luck.
Again, I did not share this with them. Zach had no idea what my 4 steps were for chasing down your dream. But that to me sure sounds a whole lot like steps number 2 and 3. Set intentional goals and execute the process with elite consistency and intensity. He said, fall in love with the journey, fall in love with the process. Success leaves clues. Successful people who have chased down their dreams tend to have a similar story. Let me recap those 4 steps. Step number 1, don't be realistic. Step number 2, set intentional goals. Step number 3, execute the process with elite intensity and consistency. Step number 4, reflect and iterate. Now, before I leave you, I would be remiss if I didn't leave you with a reminder that you are more important than your performance. You are more important than whether or not you accomplish these outcome goals, these performance goals, these process goals, whether or not you accomplish your dream. Whether or not you chase down your dream, you are incredibly valuable just as you are. Your identity is not defined by how you're playing on the field. Your worth is not determined by your performance. Your value is not dependent on how you're performing in the classroom or how you're performing in your job. You, just as you are more than enough. God made you in his image, and his love for you will never change. That is where your value is. I have to leave you with a couple closing remarks. As always, everything in these newsletters and podcasts is completely free. It takes me many hours each week researching, writing, illustrating, designing, yada, 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 all that stuff. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. The best way you can support it and allow it to continue is to share it with somebody you know. So if you're listening to this on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever, just copy the link, send it to somebody, say, hey, I think you'd like this. Subscribe, follow, wherever you get these podcasts at. Subscribe to the newsletter at gtperformance.co/newsletter. Any way you subscribe or share is greatly appreciated. The second thing, everything in these newsletters and podcasts is not medical advice for you or your athlete. Please consult directly with a healthcare professional. And until next time, go be great out there.
Yeah, straight A student, but I'm friends with the cool kids. Following the rules and the rubric. Freestyle on the bus and it's too lit.